With my memory returned, I made a solemn promise to leave behind the husband and family who had treated me so poorly. Where could I be? My name is Meg, and I'm 28 years old. Awakening, I discovered myself nestled in a hospital bed. Perplexed by my surroundings, the sound of approaching footsteps caught my attention. Suddenly, a man burst into the room, his face contorted with anger. Yet to my bewilderment, I had no recollection of him whatsoever. I have no idea who this man is. Excuse me, but who are you? I inquired, my voice tinged with confusion. Meg, are you kidding me? If you're awake, you must be fine. So, leave the hospital right away. Being hospitalized is such an overreaction. You're dragging me into this mess. His tone was harsh and accusatory, catching me off guard. How rude of him to shout at me upon our first meeting. As his voice echoed through the room, a nurse and a security guard rushed in, swiftly removing him from the scene. I remained frozen in shock, grappling with the abruptness of the encounter. Soon after, my mother, Mary, entered the room, her eyes brimming with tears of relief. Meg, you're awake. I'm so glad. We were so worried about you. But her words felt disjointed, disconnected from my reality as I struggled to piece together the fragments of my memory. My brother Jake, usually so stoic, had tears streaming down his face. Even my father Ken, known for his reserve, couldn't hide his emotion as he stood beside Jake. According to their account, I was discovered collapsed in front of our house. I had suffered a concussion and a deep cut on my head requiring stitches, injuries of which I had no memory. Apparently, a neighbor had witnessed my fall and called for medical help due to the significant bleeding. That's what Mom told me. Mom, who was that confrontational man earlier? I asked, puzzled. Confrontational man? Now it was my family's turn to be confused. After a conversation with the nurse and security guard who had escorted the man out, it became apparent that the aggressive individual was supposed to be my husband. Wait, I'm married. I have absolutely no memory of that, I exclaimed, stunned by the revelation. Meg, are you serious? My brother's concerned gaze bored into mine. Why did you collapse in front of that house? And that guy earlier, he was yelling at you to leave the hospital right away. Do you have amnesia? My mother muttered, her worry evident as she quickly reached for the nurse call button. After explaining the situation to the nurse, I underwent a battery of medical tests. With too many procedures to complete in a single day, and results not immediately available, I found myself inundated with visitors as I waited. My coworkers arrived bearing my favorite snacks, flowers, fruit, and other thoughtful gifts to aid in my recovery. Some even brought personalized tokens of affection. Friends streamed in one after another, their concern palpable as they came to check on me. Amidst the influx of well-wishers, amidst the love and support pouring in, there emerged a discordant note. Shockingly, it came from my own husband, Kevin, and his parents. How long do you plan to stay in the hospital? Do you have any idea how much this is costing us? Who do you think is footing the bill? You need to get out of here as soon as possible. You're being lazy. Get back to work immediately. Your absence is causing us significant problems. These incredulous remarks were uttered by none other than Kevin and his parents amid the sea of concerned faces. When my father witnessed their callousness, he was taken aback, seeing a side of them he'd never known. My daughter is gravely injured. She's here because she needs medical care. You heartless people have no right to speak to her in such a manner, he retorted, his voice carrying a firmness I hadn't heard before from his typically gentle demeanor. Please leave at once, my brother and mother echoed my father's sentiment. Your presence is not welcome here anymore. That day, pressured by my family's firm stance, I hastily departed. Yet despite my swift exit, my husband and in-laws persisted, bombarding the hospital staff with complaints and demands for my discharge. Eventually, I was relocated to a private room, where their access was promptly restricted. Remarkably, the hospital granted me the privilege of staying in the private room at the cost of a shared one, a stroke of luck amidst the chaos. As test results trickled in, revealing a significant loss of memory, the surreal nature of my situation dawned upon me. How could such a thing happen in the realm of reality? Initially suspected to be a result of traumatic injury, the absence of brain bleeding despite my head striking the concrete road raised doubts about the diagnosis. The diagnosis unveiled a psychological condition triggered by the impact to my head, plunging me into a bewildering state. I grappled with the incomprehensible reality unfolding before me, unable to even recall the visage of my purported husband, let alone fathom our marital bond. It appeared I had been wedded and cohabiting with my in-laws. Kevin, my supposed spouse at 35 years old, toiled at my in-laws' establishment while I served as a secretary elsewhere, a semblance of normalcy amidst the turmoil. However, normalcy quickly unraveled as I learned of the suffocating grip under which my actions were ensnared by Kevin and his family. They seized control of my earnings, converting my labor into their gains, casting a shadow over what should have been wedded bliss. My salary vanished almost as swiftly as it appeared, leaving me bereft of financial autonomy. Amidst the fiscal suffocation, I found myself shackled to the endless demands of household chores, a burden unjustly heaped upon me as Kevin shirked his responsibilities, citing archaic gender norms as justification. His actions painted a stark portrait of marital oppression, a narrative where blame and verbal barbs were hurled at me relentlessly, branding me as useless and slow-witted for every perceived misstep. Under the suffocating weight of marital expectations, I endured incessant haranguing from my in-laws who incessantly badgered me about household chores, work, and the inability to conceive. Even the simple act of enjoying a proper meal became a distant luxury within the confines of that house. Amidst this oppressive atmosphere, it became evident that my exhaustion was mounting. While Kevin chauffeured me to and from work, his motives were far from altruistic. Rather, it was a calculated effort to ensure my compliance, to prevent any deviation that might incur unnecessary expenses. It was my coworker and confidant, Betty, who pieced together the fragments of my married life, recounting conversations where I had confided in her about the trials endured with Kevin and my in-laws. As Betty recounted the details, memories slowly began to resurface, revealing the events leading up to the day of my injury. On that particular day, as was becoming customary, Kevin's voice pierced through the confined space of the car as we made our way home from an errand. "You took forever at the store, and now we're going to be late for our appointment. What's your excuse this time, you slowpoke?" "It wasn't just my shopping. I was searching for an item your mom requested. If you had bothered to assist me, we would have finished much sooner," I retorted, my frustration simmering beneath the surface. "Stop with the excuses. It's the same thing every time. Every outing with you ends in frustration. I shouldn't have even bothered to come along." My husband's tirade continued relentlessly, echoing through the confines of the car. For nearly an hour, he didn't let up, his anger mounting with each passing moment. Upon arriving home, his ire still ablaze, he spat out hurtful words, urging me to hurry out of the car with a final insult before forcefully pushing me from the driver's seat, causing me to tumble onto the unforgiving concrete below. Even as I lay there, wounded and vulnerable, he didn't cease his verbal assault. Ignoring my plight, he drove away, leaving me stranded and injured. It was a vigilant neighbor who stumbled upon my motionless form, bleeding from a head wound, prompting the call for an ambulance. Recalling this harrowing incident, I contacted the authorities, determined to seek justice for the pain I had endured. Subsequent investigations, supported by security camera footage, validated the truth of my memories. Anger coursed through me as I grappled with the cruelty I had endured. Why had I been subjected to such treatment? I vowed silently that he would face the consequences for his actions. Yet even as I harbored this resolve, the reality of my marriage to Kevin remained hazy and distant, as if belonging to another life entirely. My weary body, coupled with the revelations of my medical condition, served as stark reminders of the ordeal I had endured, a testament to the grim reality of the married life Betty had described. Upon my discharge from the hospital, I made the decision to eschew returning to Kevin's household, instead opting to seek solace in the familiar embrace of my parents' home. There, within the sanctuary of my childhood abode, I was enveloped in a cocoon of love and care fit for a princess. "Meg, today we prepared your favorite fried chicken. Indulge yourself, dear, and your father even brought home a cake. Let's savor it together later," my mother would announce with a smile, her culinary prowess transforming each meal into a feast. Meanwhile, my father and brother lavished me with unwavering attention and support. Under the tender ministrations of my family, my body gradually found renewal with each passing day. My workplace, understanding of my plight, encouraged me to take a leave of absence, insisting that I return only once fully restored. In the embrace of my parents' nurturing care, not only did the wounds from my accident begin to heal, but the burdensome weight of fatigue began to lift as well. Remarkably, even my hair and skin, ravaged by the ordeal of hospitalization, regained their former luster. It was a testament to the profound impact of stress. Burdened by the weight of my tumultuous married life, a sudden wave of anxiety gripped my thoughts. Must I return to that house simply because of marriage? The question spilled from my lips, betraying my unease. Don't concern yourself with that, dear. No one will compel our beloved daughter to endure such hardships. You must sever ties and seek a divorce as soon as possible, reassured my mother, her words a balm to my troubled soul. Following a family discussion, it was decided to seek legal counsel from a trusted friend of my father, a lawyer who had known me since childhood and shared a long-standing relationship with my family. Upon learning the details of my plight, the lawyer, much like my family, expressed vehement outrage and resolved to assist in every possible way. With the guidance of this skilled legal advocate, the process of divorce commenced smoothly, offering a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness of my marital ordeal. Meanwhile, within the confines of Kevin's household, simmering resentment filled the air as Kevin and his parents seethed with frustration. When will she return? The smooth operation of the store depends on her. We can't afford to wait any longer, Kevin lamented, his tone tinged with irritation. Echoing his sentiments, his mother-in-law interjected, "She's been discharged from the hospital, hasn't she? There's no reason for her to remain away. Instead of idling, she should focus on providing us with an heir." Adding fuel to the fire, his father-in-law chimed in, "She's become too accustomed to being coddled. Once she returns, we'll need to remind her of her responsibilities." In their desperation, they resorted to incessant calls to my parents' home, each inquiry dripping with urgency. "Is Meg there? Why hasn't she returned yet? Surely she's recovered by now. We have our business to consider, so we implore you to send her back immediately." My brother relayed the relentless demands they had made over the phone. Despite my family's unanimous support for my decision to stay away, I felt compelled to retrieve my belongings from the house. Seeking legal guidance, I enlisted the aid of a lawyer, and my father agreed to accompany me on this endeavor. From the moment I set foot inside, tension hung thick in the air, and the accusatory tirades began anew. "How long do you intend to linger at your parents' home? Why haven't you been answering your phone? Your negligence is appalling. It's high time you return to your duties. There's an overwhelming backlog of chores and responsibilities awaiting your attention." Kevin and my in-laws berated me without restraint. However, their vitriol was swiftly silenced as the lawyer and my father entered the room, their presence commanding a momentary pause in the onslaught of accusations. "Why did you bring a lawyer? What business do they have here?" they demanded, their anger palpable. "Let's take a moment to sit down and talk," the lawyer intervened, her calming presence guiding them towards the living room alongside my father. As they engaged in discussion, I retreated upstairs to my room, my mind swirling with uncertainty. Why had I returned to this oppressive environment? It dawned on me that I had left behind crucial evidence of the emotional abuse endured within these walls, a diary meticulously chronicling the hurtful words and actions of Kevin and my in-laws. The lawyer had stressed its importance as evidence, and I possessed another piece of damning proof, carefully concealed from prying eyes. As I busied myself with packing, the tense atmosphere downstairs erupted into a cacophony of voices. "Who consented to the divorce? You can't make decisions on your own." The sharp sound of impact echoed through the house, sending a shiver down my spine. It was evident that my father and the lawyer had broached the topic of divorce, sparking a volatile reaction from Kevin and his family. Frantically clutching my packed belongings, I hurried downstairs, only to be met by Kevin emerging from the entrance, his accusatory words cutting through the tension. "What's with the luggage? Are you not planning to return? And who's spreading rumors about winning a divorce? Explain yourself." His voice was laced with anger as he reached out towards me. Thankfully, the lawyer intervened just in time, her presence a barrier between us. "Violence is never acceptable," she asserted firmly. "I'm not being violent. I just want to talk to her," Kevin protested, his frustration evident. "You need to communicate calmly," the lawyer insisted, maintaining a firm stance. However, as Kevin attempted to approach me once more, the doorbell chimed with an urgent tone. "Yes, who is it?" My mother-in-law's voice crackled through the intercom. "We are the police. Is Kevin Davis at home?" came the unexpected reply. "Kevin Davis is my husband's full name. What could the police possibly want here?" My mother-in-law's voice quivered with apprehension. Could you please open the door if Mr. Davis is present? The police persisted. With a sense of urgency, my mother-in-law hastened to the door and swung it open. Excuse us, which one of you is Kevin Davis? The officers inquired. That would be me, my husband responded, his tone tense. Kevin Davis, you were under arrest on suspicion of assault. Please come with us to the station, the police declared, their words hanging heavy in the air. As the police officer made the announcement, the tension in the room was palpable. I could hear my mother-in-law's sharp intake of breath, a testament to the shock rippling through the household. My husband, too, appeared shaken, his voice trembling as he questioned, "Why me?" His confusion was evident, but there was no denying the gravity of the situation. Indeed, what had initially seemed like a mere incident had now escalated into a criminal case following the official complaint lodged with the police. Fortunately, the presence of security camera footage left no room for ambiguity or excuses. Initially, my husband was led away in silence. However, his composure quickly gave way to vehement protests. "I'm not at fault. It's her clumsiness that caused this. It's an exaggeration to call it assault just because I nudged her. Meg, are you even listening? Withdraw the complaint immediately." His shouts reverberated through the house, drawing the attention of concerned neighbors who began to gather at the entrance. Amidst the chaos, my mother-in-law's anguished cries pierced the air, while my father-in-law stood in stunned silence. Choosing to ignore the tumult unfolding behind us, my father, the lawyer, and I departed from the house, leaving behind the tumultuous scene. Subsequently, we took decisive action by dispatching a certified letter to my husband and in-laws, formally initiating divorce proceedings. Citing the recent incident and the persistent emotional abuse, we outlined the grounds for our decision. The emotional turmoil endured was meticulously documented within the pages of a diary retrieved from the house. Then, on a pivotal day when Kevin's frustration erupted in a violent outburst, my memory returned in full force. The trauma of the emotional abuse flooded back, overwhelming me with its intensity. Moreover, voice notes on my smartphone served as damning evidence, capturing the countless instances of verbal abuse. Over the course of a year, nearly 100 recordings detailed the relentless onslaught of insults and belittlement. The recordings revealed not only the venomous words of my husband but also those of my in-laws. Trivial matters such as a delayed dinner or an unprepared bath served as triggers for harsh rebukes. "Meg, it's already 7 p.m., and dinner isn't ready. Can't you handle such a simple task? You're a failure as a wife," scolded my mother-in-law. Similarly, my husband's voice echoed with disdain, berating me for my perceived incompetence. The barrage of insults, calling me a failure, useless, a slacker, and slow-witted, left me recoiling in horror. Just listening to the recordings caused me to shrink within myself, each word a painful reminder of the relentless abuse endured. The incontrovertible evidence presented by the diary and voice recordings left no room for denial or dispute. With such solid proof in hand, the divorce proceedings proceeded smoothly and swiftly. In addition to the certified letter, I included a crucial piece of evidence, a copy of Kevin's medical test results. Despite enduring unwarranted blame from my in-laws for our inability to conceive, the truth revealed in the test results was irrefutable. Kevin suffered from azoospermia. I had kept this information private out of concern for Kevin's ego, but with the decision to divorce, there was no need to maintain silence. This revelation shattered any illusions my in-laws held regarding their son's role in our infertility struggles. Throughout the legal proceedings, Kevin's lack of remorse and persistent attempts to shift blame only served to worsen his case. His behavior in court left a poor impression on the judge, resulting in a prison sentence without the possibility of probation. Furthermore, I pursued legal action against him for emotional abuse and psychological domestic violence in civil court, seeking both justice and compensation for the suffering endured. As for my feelings towards my husband, any semblance of affection had long since dissipated with the return of my memory. The impending separation brought a sense of relief, knowing that I would no longer have to endure his presence. With Kevin behind bars, I could finally find solace and closure. As for my in-laws, their initial reluctance to accept responsibility quickly dissolved when confronted with the evidence of emotional abuse. Fearing repercussions for their business, they agreed to a substantial settlement, eager to avoid further tarnishing their reputation. Despite their initial protests, they ultimately acquiesced, recognizing the gravity of the situation and the need to sever ties completely. The fears harbored by my in-laws manifested into a harsh reality. With their son, who was an integral part of their business, arrested, the whispers of gossip began to circulate. Rumors painted a grim picture of domestic violence, tarnishing the reputation of their store. Despite their daughter-in-law's contributions, she was subjected to bullying and exploitation, forced to toil without compensation at their establishment. As the rumors spread like wildfire, the once thriving business began to wither. Customers dwindled, and within a mere 6 months of Kevin's arrest, the store succumbed to bankruptcy. Having leveraged their land for a loan, my in-laws lost not only their business but also their savings, ultimately finding themselves stripped of their assets and relegated to a modest existence in an aged apartment, reliant on welfare to make ends meet. As for their future, once Kevin is released from prison, it is a matter that no longer concerns me. With our ties severed, I am no longer privy to their affairs. Meg, how about dinner tonight? Ronald, my boss and current boyfriend, asks cheerfully as we wrap up work. Come on, Ron, everyone's still around. I laugh, glancing at our colleagues. You two are just too adorable. It's sickeningly sweet, teases one of them. We're not bothered by your jealousy, Ronald retorts playfully, ignoring the banter. With a mischievous grin, he adds, I've already made reservations. Let's not keep the food waiting. In the years following my husband's arrest and subsequent release, Ronald has been a steadfast source of support. He has patiently listened to my struggles and provided unwavering assistance, even offering rides to and from work when needed. One day, out of the blue, my ex approached me with a proposition. Meg, I have something to discuss. Let's give our relationship another shot. I've changed and I'm confident we can make it work, he declared. Ronald, caught in the middle, swiftly stepped in. Leave her alone. Unfazed, my ex retorted, this doesn't concern you. It's between Meg and me. Stay out of it. Ronald stood his ground, asserting, Meg is important to me. You need to let go. If I see you bothering her again, I won't hesitate to involve the authorities. Fortunately, I haven't encountered my ex since that incident. Ronald, with his athletic build and determined demeanor, proved to be a formidable presence against my comparatively smaller ex. Despite his tough exterior, Ronald has a soft spot for sweets, a charming contrast that adds to his appeal. He's an exceptional individual who always respects my choices and opinions.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.